Hello, Home Slices. It's Kiera with Home Slice Adulting coming to you with my review for HBO Max's The Girl Before. I'm wearing my fisherman sweater. I'm chilling on a Saturday and I haven't uploaded anything in a while. And I found The Girl Before on HBO Max and I was like, this is really interesting to me. I should do a review, and that's what I'm here doing. So thanks for clicking on the video. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And let's get into it. So the format for this video is going to be, I'm going to talk a little bit about the movie, what's going on, and try to get you to a place where you want to watch this movie too. So I won't have any spoilers in the first portion of this particular review. And then there's going to come a point in the video where I tell you that if you don't want spoilers, you need to leave. And then I'm going to talk about things in more detail and definitely provide some spoilers for the show. So if you don't want the show to be spoiled, watch up until that point and then navigate away, go watch the show, and maybe come back so you can hear my thoughts on the rest of what happened in the show. So you've been warned. Anyways, let's get into it. So, The Girl Before is a 4-episode mini-series on HBO Max. It's classified as a psychological thriller, and it has 4 main characters. We have Jessica Plummer, who's playing Emma. Emma is the girl before. Ben Hardy is playing Simon. Simon is Emma's boyfriend. We have Gugu Mbatha-Raw. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. She is portraying Jane, who is the new person who is in this home. And then we have David Oyelowo, sorry if I mispronounced that as well, as Edmund Monkford, who is a minimalist architect who created the house that it's actually an additional character in the show. And so the overall theme, I'm going to read to you what like a little tagline is. Okay, so in The Girl Before, after getting the chance to move into an ultra-minimalist house designed by an enigmatic architect, Edward Monkford, Jane begins to question if her fate will be the same as the woman who lived there before. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over some themes that are covered in the show. I'm going to loosely cover them because I don't want to give anything away. It's also kind of a way for this to be a trigger warning. Like certain things may not be comfortable for people. So if any of these things really like turn you off, then maybe this is not the series for you. And then after I talk about the themes, I'm going to talk a little bit about the story, just enough to give you a little taste of what's going on in the story. And of course, you can watch the trailer as well to see if you're interested. And then we'll get into the actual juicy stuff of like, I'm going to spoil it for you. So here we go. Some of the themes that they talk about are abuse and control. And when I say abuse and control, more specifically, there are issues of domestic violence. There are instances of drugs and alcohol being used. And another interesting point that they mildly cover regarding control is about how technology can have the potential to control our lives. I'm going to talk about that in the spoiled portion, but I think I gave you enough to kind of let you know what's going on. Because in addition to this being a minimalistic house, it also is a smart house that has technology built into it to help you live your best minimalistic life version. So that's another important piece of the story. So another thing that they cover is grief. A number of these characters are experiencing grief. That grief is a result of things like losing a baby, manslaughter, and murder. So those are some additional themes of what happens as well. There is also a pretty long story arc or theme regarding sexual assault. And particularly about how it's handled by law enforcement and our perceptions in like the general culture about what sexual assault is. Additionally, there are themes about mental health. When you talk about these other themes that I've discussed, abuse, grief, sexual assault, all of those have, a really big impact on mental health. So that's covered a little bit in the show as well. And the overall theme, personally, the theme that stood out the most to me, but also felt like a kind of under the radar theme, was the idea of women standing up for and protecting other women. So those are the themes that, I found to be the most standout themes from the whole series. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the story. It's not going to spoil anything for you. Okay. So again, like I said, it's a 4-episode miniseries. It really could have been a movie, but having the additional time, each episode is about an hour long, it allowed them to go deeper into a few of the things that I mentioned before. There are a number of twists and turns, as is normal in psychological thrillers. I was able to predict one twist, but there were a couple of twists that I was not prepared for. So I'm a pretty smart cookie, and can pick up on a number of clues and whatnot. But there are some twists that are interesting enough that you won't expect them, at least in my estimation, if I'm using my own self as like the barometer. So if you don't like being able to predict what's going to happen at the end of a psychological thriller, this is a good one for you to watch. I really enjoyed it. The characters were well rounded, and the story unfolded at a pace that really made sense. And that's something that I will say about, if you watch any shows or series that are from the UK, they pace the stories really well in a way that I feel like some American shows and things don't. But anyways, the end of each episode made you want to watch the next one. So it was really good. I think we watched it over the course of 3 nights. So anyways, the miniseries is going to make you question a lot of things about what it means to have integrated technology in the home, what abuse and grief really look like, and how important mental health is. So I enjoyed the series, and I think you will too. Now, here's the point in this video where I'm going to start going into more and more detail about what happened. And so if you don't want it to be spoiled and you actually are interested in watching it, I suggest you turn off this video now, go to HBO Max, check out the 4 episodes. It'll take you about 4 hours to get through all of them. And in a world of binging, 4 hours really is nothing. So go ahead and do that. Go ahead and leave now before I start talking about the spoiler things. So you got like 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, we about to get spoiled. Okay, up in here. Okay, anyways, so we have Edward Monkford, who is an architect. He built a house that he originally intended to live in with his own family, and then things went awry. Okay, but anyways, this house has been constructed. It's very minimalistic. It has all of the same kind of earth tones. It's very modern. There are certain things about it that don't make sense. And so one of the things that I enjoy houses that look modern on the outside but still feel homey on the inside. I don't know that I could feel at home in a house like this. Everything feels kind of cold. And I don't think there's like any carpet. It doesn't, no children can live there because the stairs don't have a railing. Like certain things about the house make it feel like it's a building that has a business in it as opposed to like being a home. But for some people, that is really appealing to them, just not for me. So anyways, this minimalistic architect, Edward, has a real obsession with reviewing the lives of the people who live in this house. And unfortunately, he only allows people to live in the house if they look like his dead wife. Who happened to die on the building site of this very house. So right away, we know something wrong with him, okay? So anyways, in this house, there are a bunch of rules. At the beginning of the first episode, we have the real estate agent telling these people who are applying to live in this house that there's a lot of rules. Because it's designed for minimalistic living, Edward wants to keep that integrity, so there can't be any clutter. You can't bring pillows, which they call cushions. You can't hang pictures on the walls. You can't have too many people over. The house, provides the toiletries, so you can't even bring your own toiletries. Like, there are certain things that when you're moving from one place to another, you pack all your stuff up and you bring it over. But that's not how it works here. You really can only bring a handful of things. The closet is very small, so you can only have so many clothes. Maybe you can bring over a few dishes. The house is just so minimalistic that there's hardly any storage. So it really, to minimize the clutter, you really can't bring a lot of stuff. And that's the way Edmund wanted the house to be, and you got to live by those rules, apparently, if you want to stay there. Additionally, the house asks you to take random surveys. These surveys are like 50 question surveys with statements that you hit agree or disagree. And that's another theme that kind of runs through the entire show. And essentially, you're completing these surveys and you're living by these rules, and you get to live in the house for free. So in exchange for data and not having your stuff with you, you live in the house for free. So is that a fair exchange? I don't know. But anyways, Yeah, so we have the two women. We have Emma, who's the girl before, the younger one, and then we have Jane, who is the older one, who is living in the house 3 years after Emma. So we find out that they're running these stories parallel to each other, which I think is really effective, and showing each of their experiences with beginning to live in the house and going through the application process together, and how a lot of these things kind of happen in tandem and in parallel. And you see how similar their stories are. And so they both suffered major traumas right before applying, which made them good candidates for Edmond, apparently. We learned that the first woman, Emma, was robbed at knife point while her boyfriend, Simon, was out with friends. And she seemed to be really shook up by that, but we later find out that there's more to the story. And then we have Jane, who's the new woman in the house, who recently had a stillbirth at 39 weeks pregnant. That's only 1 week away from being full term. So there weren't a whole bunch of indicators of her baby not being healthy until like right up to the end. So she's grieving a lost baby. She has to deal with people asking questions about, why she's pregnant and there's no baby now, which sounds horrific. Okay. And feeling guilty that the baby died because of something that she did. So in the end, they have these parallel situations that are going on. They both, Emma is dealing with a bunch of stuff because in addition to being robbed at knife point, when she was robbed at knife point, the assailant took her phone. When the police find the assailant, they look at the phone and they see that there's a video that has been taken of someone orally sexually assaulting Emma. And they're having this conversation in front of Emma's boyfriend, Simon. And this is the first time that Emma is being confronted or confronting the fact that she was sexually assaulted. And what the police are trying to do, particularly this male detective, is trying to make this leap in judgment that we found a video on your phone of someone sexually assaulting you. It must be the person who robbed you at knife point. We need you to help bring him in, because this person who robbed her at knife point has been robbing people at knife point for a long time. And so getting him off the streets is a priority for the detective. However, some wires get crossed, okay? Eventually we learn that the video was taken 5 days before she was robbed at knife point. So somebody did sexually assault her, but it was not the man that robbed her at knife point. And so now there's an additional layer of craziness in Emma's life, because by this time Emma has broken up with Simon. She has started a relationship with Edmond. She went to court to testify against her, the person who robbed her, to say that he sexually assaulted her. And then the police find out there's a discrepancy in the date of the video versus the date of the robbery. So now she gets arrested for lying to the police about being sexually assaulted by the robber. So now the robber's out on bail, and he could attack her at any moment for lying about him sexually assaulting her. Edmond is out of town, so she doesn't have a support system that's there for her. She's drinking. She's not playing by the rules of the house anymore. So she is unraveling because she has definitely been sexually assaulted. But because she lied to the police, the male detective in particular is actually being very cruel to her. Because now, because he was trying to be so swift about making sure that she testified against the person who robbed her, and he didn't evaluate the video to see when it was taken, he's basically kind of being forced to retire early because of this kind of, I guess it was a career-ending mistake. So now, the person who was helping her kind of turned on her, because now he's facing like some pressure at work because of how things unfolded. So she's going through. And then we have Jane, who, because she doesn't have an actual baby to take care of because the baby died, she still has a lot of maternity leave left. And but they hired somebody in her place, so now she's doing something else at work, and she's grieving. She goes out for coffee with Edmond and finds out that he lost a child as well, so they are trauma bonding. They strike up a relationship, but Edmond's relationships, like his house, have rules. He wants his relationship to be minimalistic the same way the house is. And the problem is that life does not work that way. For Emma in particular, because she had so much stuff going on, her life was super cluttered and super messy. So that's what was going on with Emma. Emma was very young. She was doing things that young people do. And Edmund did not like that. And so we see this pressure building with Edmund, like saying to her, like, I can't do this. We said we would do this for as long as it was perfect. There are no strings attached. There are no romantic gestures. We're just here to be in each other's lives, to have a relationship, to have a sexual relationship. We go places together. It's a non-traditional relationship that's supposed to be minimalistic, but Emma has too much going on for him, and then he eventually breaks up with her. But there's a point in the movie where, not the movie, the story, where she sends him a picture of a tattoo on a butt, and he leaves from where he is from out of town to come back. And he's like, let me see the tattoo. And he discovers that it's a picture of another girl and not her. And he's like, why are you doing this? And I'm like, the girl has to be in her early 20s, 24, maybe 25. She's young. She's a child of social media. She is not getting the attention that she needs from you. So she did an attention grabbing move. And that attention grabbing move got you to come. She's going through. She's having a lot of issues. Not only was she sexually assaulted, she was also arrested for lying about who sexually assaulted her. So at this point in the story, we don't know who sexually assaulted her, but she's still dealing with the trauma from that. And we saw that she's been talking to a therapist, but she didn't even tell her therapist that she was sexually assaulted until she was confronted by the police. And then the other theme about the police and how they handle sexual assault is, I think that the male detective in particular, was doing a sloppy job of not doing his due diligence so that he would know that the video did not correspond to the same date and time as the robbery. So that was sloppy police work. And he jumped to a conclusion that was wrong. Additionally, he told her in court, if we want to put this guy away, we need your statement because you're a witness. And he's going to plead guilty and somebody else is going to read your statement. The court date comes up, and because the guy has not pled guilty, she has to go talk to the judge and relive her abuse situation. So now she's being victimized all over again because that police officer did not let her know the eventuality of what might happen. And the lady police officer, who was probably a rank below him, was getting ready to say something to her, and the male police officer stopped her. Because he basically guaranteed this young girl who was obviously sexually assaulted that the guy would plead guilty and that she only needed to write a victim statement that would be read by somebody else. But when she gets to the courthouse, you're now telling her that that's not the case. The guy didn't plead guilty, and now we won't be able to get him off the streets, and he'll go out on bail if you don't talk to the judge. And now she's not prepared to actually talk to somebody. She hasn't talked to her therapist about what it means to have a conversation with the judge about being sexually assaulted. She's basically been ambushed. And so the police bungled it, essentially. And I know that things like this happen. I worked at a police station for 4.5 years while I was paying my way through undergrad. So I know things like this have happened. There needs to be some reform. Some psychologists and police officers need to get together so they can better handle these situations. There has been some work done, but it just needs to be better, because when you have people going through traumatic situations, police officers can be so matter of fact and so dead set on getting the assailant that they kind of ignore the fact that this person is going through emotional pain and handling it in a way that's really insensitive. So I thought that that was a really, really good and interesting theme, and that it was pretty taboo to talk about. So anyways, that's what's going on with Emma. And other things are happening as well. Like, she gets red paint thrown on her for lying to the police. And we don't even see who did it. We kind of saw his face, but I don't know who threw that paint on her. But the paint gets on her in the house. Somebody goes in the house and writes in red paint, "Leave." And so Edmund isn't there. Edmund isn't talking to her because, they basically broke up. So she calls on Simon, and she tells Simon what really happened. Like, she was on a business trip. She works with Simon's friend, who is a notorious playboy at the office, even though he is married to Emma's friend. I think Emma's friend's name is Ashley. So Emma works with Simon's friend, whose name is Saul. Saul, like I said, is a notorious playboy at work, even though he is married to and also works with his wife, Ashley. Saul and Emma were away on a business trip. They were both drinking. And at the end of the day, he forces himself on her and forces her to give him oral sex, which is still rape or sexual assault. And he records it on his phone, and the next day he sends it to her. And she is caught up in this web of like, hey, did I want it? I didn't say no. I was drunk. And, these are thoughts that happen with people who are sexually assaulted under, especially if they're under the influence. So she has a lot of stuff going on with her. Okay. So that's what's happening with her. The story, builds at a good pace, but I'm gonna try to make it go a little faster because this video is already 20 plus minutes. So anyways, we got some grieving going on. Jane loses her child at 39 weeks. We find out that the reason, or presumably the reason, that she lost her baby was due to a lack of continuity of care. So basically she went into the office complaining of like something was wrong with the baby and she was experiencing abdominal pain. So she talked to a nurse, and then the second nurse who came in only helped her with the abdominal pain and recommended a medication and sent her on her way instead of checking into the baby. And so she gets help from this stillbirth organization to understand what really happened to her baby. And so now she doesn't necessarily have that guilt anymore, but she does feel upset that the hospital, couldn't save her child or didn't do all they were supposed to do to save the child. So that's another thing. Edmund, we find out, has lost both his wife, who looks just like Emma and Jane, and his child Max when they were building this house. A wall fell on them, and later we find out that the reason the wall fell on them was because Edmund was upset about the placement of the wall. So he gets into some type of machinery and knocks the wall over, not realizing that his wife and child were on the other side, and they both die, and they are buried at this house based on some type of Japanese ceremony, which is supposed to be like sacrificing someone to a house so that it'll be there for like 1,000 years. I don't know, whatever. So they're both grieving, again, trauma bonding. Let's talk about abuse. It's not always physical. I think Edmund is actually a pretty emotionally abusive person for his own gain. And he buys them the same things, the same necklace, the same dress. He takes them to the same places, this church with this really interesting architecture, which we later find out is the place where he married his wife. We see that he... what else does he do? He strikes up the same type of relationship with them. He does the same sex moves. I'm kidding. I don't know that part, but that was pretty funny. But it seems like he's stuck in this pattern. He gets women that looks like his wife, and he reenacts the same thing with them as he did. And it's like he's just taking different actors and placing them in the roles or whatever. And there's a point in the story where he kind of catches Emma not abiding by the rules of the house. And he says like, she wouldn't do this, or you wouldn't do this. And it's like, you cannot just copy and paste somebody into your wife's role. So essentially, because of the grief that he has experienced from losing his wife and child and possibly feeling responsible for that because it was his fault, okay? He is kind of stuck in this thing where he's trying to replace his wife and make the situation perfect for him, not necessarily considering what would be perfect for his partner. So anyways, the other emotionally abusive part is that the house is in on it somehow. So there's a point in the movie where things stop working in the house, namely the shower. So the shower stops working on an important day for both Emma and for Jane. And they go to the little console that's built into the house where the smart house screen is. And basically they have to fill out a 50-question survey before they can do things in the house like shower. And it's like, are you kidding me? To me, that's really abusive, especially because those were very important days for the ladies. But now the house is not going to work until you fill out the survey. And so that's another method of control, which is freaking crazy. That kind of blew my mind a little bit. And I was like, smart houses are cool. But if you've ever seen Smart House on Disney, it's not a good idea. So anyways, again, the house is abusive. We find out that the house has additional capabilities like voice recognition, which throws off Jane because it's like, if there's voice recognition, that means that I could be recorded. So you're violating my privacy. Later on, we see that the house has downloaded something onto her computer, which I'll get into that later. And she finds out that the house also has cameras that are so well hidden and she sees herself on the camera. So now she has to go confront Edward about the camera. So she feels like it's a violation of her privacy, that it has gone beyond what he promises, that like the house doesn't collect anything that Facebook wouldn't know about you, but being able to record visually and audio, visual and audio of what's happening. I don't know that Facebook does that. Okay. Like where you're living. So anyways, the other thing that I think is so good and so important, as we are about to exit Black History Month and enter Women's History Month, is about women supporting and standing up for other women. When you think about Emma, she was done wrong by so many people in her life. She was sexually assaulted by her boyfriend's friend. We find out later that she was abused by Simon as well. Edmund kind of abandoned her as well. The male police officer, when she called him about things that happened subsequent to her being arrested for a false report, he like flat out rejected her and talked to her in a way that no public servant should talk to a citizen. Okay. So all of these men failed her in her life, and really the only person who seemed to care enough to investigate what happened to her was Jane. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Jane is now pregnant with is it Edward or Edmund? Shoot, that man's name might be Edward. I've been calling him Edmund. Anyways, she's now pregnant with Ed's baby, okay? And so now she has to figure out if the father of her child is a freaking murderer. So that's one thing. Also, if something happened to Jane and she looked just like me, maybe that's going to happen to me too. But I also think that she was motivated just by like the need to know the truth, because the girl died in the house. Ed's wife died in the house. Wife and child died in the house and are still there. Their remains are anyway. And the police didn't really investigate what happened to her. Nobody seemed to really know or care what really happened to her. And that's another thing about the police. Just because you have done something wrong or have some type of criminal history, or, you know, whatever is going on with that part of your life, doesn't mean that the police get to slack off in finding out what happened to you if you die under suspicious circumstances. So personally, I think that the fact that she had a negative run-in with the police was an influential factor in the reason why they didn't truly investigate her death, which is so wrong. It's wrong. You deserve justice in your death, even if you have a criminal past. So anyways, the fact that Jane went throughout this whole process to figure out what happened to Emma, and she does figure out what happened to Emma, which I'll talk about a little bit later. And so there's this type of care that Jane took of Emma that nobody else did. And so I think that that was a powerful theme that really doesn't become apparent to the end of the series. So moving on. Here are my few last little things that I really enjoyed about this series that were like a little cryptic, kind of morals of the story, whatever. So there's a tree in the courtyard. Nice tree. The courtyard is pretty nice. It's like a courtyard that you would see in a business. Again, this house feels more commercial than it does residential to me. But this tree is on top of the place where his wife and child are buried. And throughout the series, it kind of symbolizes time. You see the leaves changing, that type of thing. So there's this random fox that keeps showing up in the courtyard, and it did make sense to me, because when certain things don't make sense, they're supposed to be hints, and I'm like, I can't understand why this fox is in the courtyard. First of all, where the heck did the fox come from? Because to me, it looked like the courtyard was actually closed off and didn't have any entrance except through the house, but later on we find out that that's not true, because the robber who robbed Emma at knife point comes back to this house with a knife and breaks in, but then Simon comes out of nowhere and wrestles oh boy and breaks a bottle over his head, and he's like, you need to get the F out of here, and manages to protect Emma. It's crazy. That was crazy. I don't know. That part shocked me. I mean, it made sense. She tried to put him under the jail about lying about sexually assaulting her. So I see why he would do it. But I wasn't expecting that. Anyways, so the fox shows up, and he shows up a few times, maybe 2 or 3 times throughout the series. And I'm like, who does this symbolize? Like, I thought it was supposed to symbolize Edward or Edmund, whatever his name is. Edward, I think, is the correct name. But in the end, it ends up representing Simon and his cunningness. So for 3.5 episodes of this 4-episode series, we think Edmund is crazy. He's capable of doing major physical harm. He probably killed Emma. That's what we're thinking. That he's like stuck in this loop that begins with a tenant landlord agreement and then ends with a dead mixed race woman at the bottom of the stairs with no railing. But no, Simon is the crazy one, capable of killing. So we find out that he had still been living in the house even after she kicked him out because he was staying in the service cupboard. We find out that he's the person who threw Emma down the stairs after a disagreement, because he gets her phone, changes her contacts to make it look like Edward is texting her. She texts him back basically saying like, I'll take you back. And now Simon is pissed because now that means that they're not getting back together. And so now he's accusing her of seducing and sleeping with his best friend, even though he obviously sexually assaulted her. He's mad that they're not going to be getting back together, and he loves her so much and he's obsessed with her. Then he throws her down the stairs and she's dead. And somehow he's able to leave the house without a trace. And because the police didn't investigate properly, and because he unplugged the cameras had been disconnected in the house the day that she had died, there either was no evidence or the police didn't care enough to really investigate. So he projected all of his feelings about Emma onto Jane because they look so much alike. So now that Jane and Simon are having dinner trying to figure out what happened to Emma, now Jane is picking up what Simon is putting down, that he is crazy, and now he's treating Jane as if she were Emma, and now and now Jane has to fight for her life from this crazy dude who brought gasoline into the house to burn it down. Now looking at this house, burning down a minimalistic house is hilarious because it looks like it's mostly made of stone, which is essentially fireproof. Maybe he would burn a few pieces of furniture and like the kitchen would get messed up and there'd be some smoke damage, but the house probably has enough integrity as a minimalistic house to not really be burned down. So Jane and Simon get into a scuffle and Simon ends up falling down the stairs and dying just like Emma did. So yeah, Simon was in a mental health crisis after he killed Emma. And he projected those feelings onto Jane, and Jane got justice for Emma. He falls down the stairs and he's dead. And instead of calling the police, Jane calls Edward because now she's sure that Edward, her baby daddy, is not a murderer. So they talk about it, and Edward's like, we can spin this story in two ways. We can tell the truth, or we can say that Simon came here and attacked you because of, his mental health issues. And Jane did the honorable thing, and she told the truth because the truth will set you free, and it set Emma free because now Emma can get justice for what happened to her in her death. She can get justice for what happened to her with her sexual assault as well. So yeah. So I literally thought that what happened with Simon was going to happen with Edmund. And that was a twist that I was not expecting. It wasn't until the 4th episode where Simon kept kind of coming around that I was like, I hadn't suspected Simon the whole time, but he might be the crazy one. So anyways, this whole story explores what it means to be grieving, what it means to be having a mental health crisis, what it means to have people in your life that are not supportive of you, who don't understand you, what it means to be, be a victim of a crime, what it means to be, coerced into doing something that you don't want to do, or how trauma will impact your decision making. There's a lot of stuff going on here. It is indeed a psychological thriller. I enjoyed it a lot. Cinematically, it was really great. The house definitely was a character in the movie. And while the house had some cool elements, I could never live that way. Y'all better be glad y'all can't see my house. My house is full of clutter. Edward Mumford would lose his freaking mind coming up in this house. So thanks so much for watching. I didn't mean for this video to be so long, but that's how I felt about the movie. I felt so, not movie, series. I just felt so moved. So tell me what you think in the description below. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And peace out, home slices.